The night shift was always the quietest one at the listening station on the edge of the Andromeda frontier. Most officers hated it, but Lieutenant Kale Varos preferred the silence. There were no calls, no visitors, no commanders breathing down his neck, just the hum of the scanners and the whisper of the stars beyond the observation glass. It was peaceful, a kind of peace that only existed so far from civilization. Kale had worked here for almost 2 years, monitoring radio bands, gravitational echoes, and electromagnetic patterns from deep space. His job was simple: listen, record, and report. Most of the time, the computers did all the work while he sipped his lukewarm coffee and watched old holo serials. Out here, nothing ever happened. At least, that's what everyone believed. The listening station floated in orbit around a dead moon, a small metallic sphere with 3 decks and a crew of 7. It was one of dozens of such stations operated by the Alliance of Sentient Worlds, a coalition of alien civilizations working together to maintain peace across the galaxy. Each station kept an ear open for signs of trouble, pirate ships, rogue AI fleets, or unknown threats entering the Outer Rim. But in the past decade, nothing had crossed this sector except drifting asteroids and the occasional lost freighter. That's why Kale almost ignored the blip that appeared on his screen that night. It was tiny, a flicker, a pulse that appeared for less than a second on the frequency band. He frowned and tapped the console, thinking it was just static interference. He ran a system check, then recalibrated the antenna. But the pulse came again, stronger this time. A perfect, steady rhythm, too precise to be random noise. "Computer, run an analysis," he muttered. The machine beeped and began processing, lines of data scrolling across the screen. Kale leaned closer, watching as the waveform repeated, once every 10 seconds. It wasn't a natural signal. It wasn't background radiation or a pulsar echo. It was deliberate, structured. Someone, or something, was sending it. He sat back in his chair, heartbeat quickening. This sector was supposed to be empty. No colonies, no ships, no known routes. So who could be broadcasting from there? He checked the system logs, searching for previous entries. Nothing. He accessed the star map. The source seemed to be coming from a region of deep space known as Sector X-94, a void of black emptiness between the spiral arms. Even the exploration drones had avoided it, too unstable, too quiet. Kale's curiosity sparked like a flame. He tried boosting the signal gain. For a moment, the speakers crackled, and a low hum filled the control room. Then, faintly, came a sound that made his skin crawl. It was a tone, metallic and cold, followed by something that almost sounded like breathing. Then silence again. He froze, staring at the console. "Control, this is listening station Delta 9, he said into the comms mic. "I'm picking up an unknown signal on channel 47B, repeating sequence, unknown origin." Static answered him. The relay was always delayed out here. It could take minutes or even hours to get a reply from Central Command. So Kale kept working, fingers flying over the controls. He ran the signal through decryption filters, tried converting it into visual patterns. What appeared next made his stomach twist. It was an energy signature, a long-range echo from a massive object moving slowly through space. Too big to be a fighter, too dense to be an asteroid. It was something manufactured, something with a reactor core. "Can't be," Kale whispered. He double-checked the readings, fusion traces, metallic hull reflection, ion trail. Whoever it was, they were using old tech, ancient by Alliance standards. The kind that burned raw hydrogen instead of quantum plasma. And that detail alone was impossible. No one had used that kind of technology in hundreds of years. Hours passed, the signal growing stronger as the object drifted closer. By now, the rest of the crew had gathered around his station, drawn by the excitement. The captain, a tall reptilian named Vorin, stood behind him, eyes narrowed. "You're sure this isn't a system error?" Vorin asked. Kale shook his head. "I ran every diagnostic twice, sir, it's real." Vorin stared at the readings, his tail flicking nervously. "Could be a ghost ship," he said quietly. Kale swallowed, "or something worse." The comms light flashed. Command had finally responded. Station Delta 9, continue monitoring, maintain distance, prepare data relay. That was it, no instructions to evacuate, no reinforcements. Just observe, record, report. The standard procedure for unknown contact. Cale sighed and leaned back, but his mind was racing. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were witnessing something monumental. He increased the magnification on the holographic projection, and the object began to take shape. It wasn't a cluster or a fragment, it was a ship, enormous, sleek, with sharp edges and a faint energy glow beneath its hull. Its surface was scarred, ancient-looking, as though it had traveled through 1,000 storms and battles. The ship wasn't transmitting any identification codes. No alliance symbols, no markings from known empires. But as it turned slowly in space, a faint reflection appeared on the hull, something written in letters that made Cale's blood run cold. He couldn't make out all of it yet, but he recognized the language. It was standard English. He didn't say anything at first, afraid he might sound insane. But when the letters became clear, UNS Resolute, his breath caught in his throat. The United Nations ship Resolute. A Terran warship. A human vessel. Humanity had disappeared from the galactic records over 600 years ago. The Sol Federation had collapsed, Earth had fallen silent, and no one had ever heard from humans again. They had become a myth, a species lost to time. And yet here it was, proof drifting out of the void. A ghost from the past returning to life. The station alarms began to beep, the signal's strength was rising fast. The ship was powering up. Cale's hands trembled as he looked at the readings. Energy surge, movement detected, hull integrity stable. The Resolute was waking. Vorin barked orders to his crew, shields up, maintain distance. Cale could barely hear him, his mind was still reeling. A human warship, untouched for centuries, alive and moving through the dark. And from deep within the speakers, the signal changed once more. A voice emerged, faint but unmistakably human. This is the UNS Resolute. To any Allied vessels, we seek survivors of Earth. The control room fell silent. No one spoke. The voice repeated the message again and again. And Cale Varos realized that the stars had just given them a mystery older than the Alliance itself. A ghost ship had come home, and it was human. The message from the mysterious ship had changed everything. For hours, the crew of listening station Delta 9 sat in stunned silence, replaying the recording over and over. The voice was human, tired, shaky, but human. No one in the Alliance had heard that language spoken by a living person for centuries. To them, it was like hearing a ghost whisper from a forgotten age. The captain, Vorin, finally broke the silence. "Is the source still transmitting?" he asked. Cale checked his console. "Yes, sir," repeating every 23 seconds, the same message, same tone. Vorin folded his arms, his scaled face unreadable. "Then it's no malfunction," he said quietly, "they're alive, or someone wants us to think they are." Over the next 12 hours, every major system in the sector lit up with alerts. Defense fleets were put on standby. Research divisions scrambled to analyze the signal's origin. And every intelligence agency within the Alliance demanded updates. A ship of human origin emerging from deep space was not a small event, it was a galactic incident. By dawn, word had reached the Central Council. They authorized a containment perimeter around the signal's location. Several scout ships were sent ahead, equipped with stealth drives and long-range scanners. Delta 9's data was transmitted directly to command. Cale barely slept, his mind filled with questions that no one could yet answer. 2 days later, the first scout drone transmitted a visual feed. Cale and the crew gathered in the viewing chamber as the holographic projection flickered to life. At first, all they saw was darkness, deep space filled with drifting dust and faint starlight. Then the camera shifted, and something enormous came into view. A shape, long and metallic, slowly rotating in the void. It looked like a fortress drifting through eternity. The hull was covered in scars and burn marks. Sections of armor plating were missing, exposing twisted frameworks underneath. Yet even in its ruined state, the ship radiated power, like a sleeping beast that had survived 1,000 battles. The hologram rotated and zoomed in, revealing the faded letters once again. UNS Resolute. No one spoke for several seconds. Cale could feel his heart pounding. It wasn't a fake, it was real. The hull design, the insignia, even the weapon mounts matched the old Terran warship records. Ships like that hadn't existed in hundreds of years. The fact that one had somehow crossed galaxies to appear here defied every known law of physics. What's its energy output? Voran asked. Cale ran a quick scan. Minimal, he said, reactor seems dormant, but there's a faint life support reading, it's weak, though, almost dead. So they might still be alive, one of the engineers asked. Cale hesitated, possibly. But even he didn't know what to believe. Alliance Command ordered a fleet to approach cautiously. Not to attack, only to observe. The ship was too large to ignore but too mysterious to confront. It could be a trap, or it could be the single greatest discovery in centuries. By the time the fleet reached the edge of the system, the Resolute had stopped moving. It was floating silently, like a monument to another age. Cale watched the live feed as the Alliance frigates surrounded it. Tiny dots compared to the massive warship. He felt a strange mix of fear and fascination. There was something unsettling about the silence of the ship. No hails were answered, no weapons were powered. It just drifted, waiting. The fleet commander, Admiral Soren, transmitted his voice through the open channel. This is the Alliance Defense Command to unidentified vessel, identify yourself immediately. No response. He repeated the command in several major galactic languages. Still nothing. Then, after a long pause, a flicker of static filled the comms, followed by the same human voice. This is the UNS Resolute, to any Allied vessels, we seek survivors of Earth. Everyone listening felt a chill. Even Admiral Soren paused before responding. This is the Alliance Command, Earth no longer exists as it once did, identify your mission. But the reply never came. Only silence and the hum of the void. The scientists aboard the observation ships began to detect faint power fluctuations within the Resolute. Reactor temperatures rising slightly. Electrical systems flickering to life for brief seconds. As if the ship were slowly waking from a long, frozen sleep. Some believed it was the automated defense system rebooting. Others thought the crew, if any remained, were trying to communicate. Inside the Alliance briefing chambers, panic and debate spread like wildfire. Some leaders believed the ship was a relic and should be preserved as a historical artifact. Others suspected it might be a weapon, a doomsday relic from humanity's forgotten wars. The mention of Earth in the transmission made them uneasy. Most of the galaxy only knew the story of Earth through legends and cautionary tales. A planet that had once ruled the stars, then vanished after tearing itself apart. Cale followed every update from the command feed. He felt a strange sense of connection to the ship. It wasn't just curiosity anymore, it was personal. Something deep inside him told him that the Resolute wasn't an enemy. It was lost, alone, trying to come home. When the first light flickered from one of the ship's windows, Cale held his breath. The sensors confirmed a short burst of internal power, lights in the command deck area. It only lasted a few seconds before going dark again. But it was proof that someone or something was still aboard. The fleet increased their scans, but the hull's radiation shielding made it impossible to see inside. Rumors spread quickly through the network. Every news feed across the galaxy began reporting on that ghost warship. Millions tuned in to watch the footage of the silent ship floating among the stars. Some called it a miracle, others a warning. Priests on distant worlds claimed it was a sign of destiny. Old soldiers whispered that humanity was returning. Back at the station, Cale stared at the stars through the observation window. He imagined the humans who might still be sleeping inside the ship, men and women from a world long gone. He wondered what they would think if they knew what the galaxy had become. Would they recognize any of it? Would they even believe that 600 years had passed? A soft alarm broke his thoughts. The scanners had detected a gravitational wave, small, but growing. The Resolute was moving again, engines firing at minimal thrust. The fleet scrambled to adjust formation, keeping distance but holding their aim. As the ship turned, its main hull rotated slowly toward the Alliance ships. For a brief moment, the camera feed caught a glimpse of its front viewport, a faint shimmer. Then, a pulse of light spread from its core. Not an attack, a beacon. A signal reaching out to the stars. And on Cale's monitor, the words of the transmission changed. "This is the UNS Resolute, we are coming home." Cale leaned closer, whispering to himself. Home. The word echoed in his mind as the ship drifted closer. The human warship had finally arrived, and no one in the galaxy knew what would happen next. For hours after the Resolute's arrival, the Alliance fleet stayed at a safe distance. No one dared to make the next move. The giant human warship drifted silently, its dark metal hull glinting under the pale light of a nearby star. It was like a sleeping giant surrounded by nervous guards. Every ship kept its weapons charged, but no one wanted to fire the first shot. Lieutenant Cale Varos could not take his eyes off the live feed. The closer the cameras zoomed in, the more details appeared on the warship's surface. Faded paint, long scars from old battles, and patches of ancient Terran markings. There were names of places: Sol Fleet Command, Earth Defense Wing, UNS Navy. To most people in the Alliance, those words meant nothing. But Cale had studied history. He knew what they meant. They were proof, undeniable proof, that the ship really was human. The realization hit the entire command center at once. Every officer watching felt it. The silence on the comms was broken only by the hum of machines. Even the captain of the observation ship whispered under his breath. Humans, they were real after all. For centuries, humanity had been a mystery. Most species in the Alliance knew them only from old records and half-true stories. According to history, humans had once ruled a powerful empire stretching across hundreds of systems. But then came their Great War, a war that destroyed Earth and scattered their fleets. After that, they vanished. Some said they went extinct. Others said they left the galaxy, searching for peace or punishment. But now, one of their warships had returned. And it was right there, in front of everyone, alive. The council back on the capital world was in chaos. Messages and reports flooded the network. Debates broke out in every chamber. Was it really human? Could it be a trick? Could an old ship have survived for 600 years? Some claimed it was a fake, maybe built by pirates or someone trying to scare the Alliance. But the evidence was too strong. The ship's material composition matched ancient Terran alloys. The design was unique to human engineering, sharp, angular, built for war, not beauty. It wasn't alien, it was unmistakably human. Cale was assigned to help decode the ship's communication logs. He sat at his console for hours, replaying the same message again and again. "This is the UNS Resolute, to any Allied vessels, we seek survivors of Earth." The tone was tired, almost broken. There was something in the speaker's voice, a weight, a loneliness that Cale couldn't ignore. It didn't sound like a trap. It sounded like a plea. He began searching through the old historical archives. Very few records of the Sol Federation remained. Most were incomplete, damaged, or erased. But one detail appeared again and again: the Resolute had been part of Earth's final defense fleet. Its mission was to escort civilian ships during the war. After that, it vanished from all records. No one knew where it went, until now. Cale leaned back in his chair, his heart pounding. If the Resolute had been traveling all this time, how had it survived? How had it crossed galaxies and still functioned? The ship's engines were outdated, yet it was still operational. Somehow, it had endured the cold emptiness of space for hundreds of years. The Alliance leadership decided to send a closer inspection team. Not boarding yet, just reconnaissance. 3 small drones were launched, each equipped with scanners and cameras. Cale and the others watched as the drones approached the massive warship. It was quiet, too quiet. As the first drone neared the hull, it shined a beam of light across the surface. The letters became clear: UNS Resolute, Terran Navy Command. Cale felt a chill crawl up his spine. He wasn't even alive when humanity disappeared. No one was. And yet, seeing those letters felt personal, like meeting an ancestor. He wondered what it must have been like back then, when humans ruled, fought, and dreamed under the same stars. To most species, humans were just stories. But to Cale, they were something more, a reminder of how fragile civilizations could be. As the drones explored further, they found signs of life support energy deep inside the ship. Very weak, almost gone, but still there. There were also strange energy readings near the cryo-storage decks. The analysts believed that the crew might have been in suspended animation. Cale could hardly believe it. Could humans still be alive in there, after 600 years? The moment this information reached the council, panic spread again. Some feared that awakening humans would cause chaos, a forgotten species suddenly returning. Others were fascinated by the idea, calling it a miracle of survival. But no one could deny the truth anymore. The Resolute was real, its crew was human, and somehow, it had found its way home. As the fleet continued to monitor the ship, Cale received new data from his scanners. He zoomed in on one of the markings near the bridge section. There was a flag, barely visible, blue and white with a symbol of Earth at its center. It was torn and faded, but it was still there. The sight of that old emblem stirred something deep in him. A feeling of respect, maybe even hope. Suddenly, the sensors began to pick up faint movements inside the ship. It wasn't much, just small electrical surges, air pressure shifts, faint lights flickering on and off. The ship was waking up, piece by piece. Everyone in the control room froze, watching the feed. No weapons were armed, no aggression detected. It was as if the ship itself was trying to understand where it was. Cale imagined what the humans inside would feel if they woke up. Would they even recognize the galaxy anymore? Their allies were gone, their home was a myth, their language was almost extinct. They were relics from a time before peace, soldiers from a forgotten war. The captain of the observation vessel looked at Cale. "What do you think, Lieutenant?" he asked. Cale hesitated before answering. "I think they've been lost for a very long time, sir," he said softly. "And I think they've finally found their way back." For a long time, no one said anything. The screen showed the silent warship drifting under the starlight, its engines dark but its presence powerful. It was beautiful in a haunting way, a ghost from humanity's past returning to remind the galaxy of what once was. Every sensor on every nearby ship continued to monitor it. And across the galaxy, the word spread faster than light. A human warship had returned from the void. And the universe would never be the same again. The silence around the Resolute lasted for hours. Every ship in the Alliance fleet kept its weapons charged but fingers off the trigger. No one knew what the ancient human warship would do next. The last transmission still echoed in Cale's mind, the tired voice saying, "We seek survivors of Earth." It didn't sound like a threat, it sounded like heartbreak. Cale sat in the comms room, headphones over his ears, replaying the message again and again. Each time, he caught small details, tiny pauses, broken static, uneven breathing. Whoever had spoken was human, real, alive. That single fact made his hands tremble. He could almost imagine the person on the other end, trapped in the dark, calling out into the galaxy, not knowing anyone was listening. The Alliance Command Center demanded real-time analysis. Every expert, linguist, and scientist wanted to know, how could a 600-year-old ship still be broadcasting? Was it an AI? An automated distress call? Or living humans who had somehow survived? Cale didn't know, but deep down, he felt it, there was someone there. And they were scared. At exactly 0400 hours, the message changed. The voice crackled through the speakers again, louder this time. "This is the UNS Resolute to any Allied vessels," it said. "Requesting identification, we are lost." The last words came with static and a faint echo, like the speaker was whispering from a great distance. Cale froze, leaning closer. "They're trying to talk," he whispered. The captain ordered an immediate response. "This is the Alliance fleet," Voran said, his deep voice steady. "You are in secure space, identify your mission and crew status." There was no reply. Only the slow hum of static. The signal came again minutes later, same message, slightly clearer. Kale ran filters to clean up the audio. He noticed the background noise wasn't random, it had rhythm, almost like a heartbeat echoing through the transmission. He checked the readings and found something strange. The ship's communication system was ancient, but it had been modified, not by machine error, but by someone trying to repair it manually. That meant at least one person on board was awake. As the message looped once more, a faint second voice appeared under the first one. Kale enhanced the recording. It sounded like a woman's voice, soft and calm. "Systems failing, life support critical," she said before the static drowned her out. Kale's heart pounded. "Sir, there's another person, maybe the ship's AI or a second crew member," he said. The captain's eyes narrowed. "Can you isolate the source?" "I'm trying," Kale replied, "but it's unstable." The data link suddenly spiked, and every screen in the control room flickered. For a second, a faint holographic image appeared, a human woman's face, pale and exhausted, wearing a uniform marked with the same emblem found on the ship's hull. The image was blurry, broken by interference. She looked around as if seeing them through the static. Then she spoke. "This is Commander Elise Ward of the United Nations ship Resolute." Her voice was weak but firm. "If anyone can hear this, we have survivors in cryostasis, mission failed. Earth." The feed cut out, replaced by static. Kale jumped to his feet. "That was real," he shouted, "she's alive." The captain didn't respond for several seconds, his jaw tight. Then he turned to the crew, "Record everything, forward to Central Command." The room buzzed with energy as the officers scrambled to process the message. For the first time in history, a living human had spoken to the Alliance. Across the galaxy, the broadcast was replayed millions of times. People gathered in public squares, watching the ghostly face of Commander Ward as she spoke her broken message. Some were filled with awe, others with fear. To many, humans were legends of destruction, warriors who had almost destroyed their own world. Now one of them was back, asking for help. The Alliance Council met in emergency session. Some members argued that the ship should be destroyed before it became a threat. Others demanded a rescue mission, saying it was a moral duty to help the survivors. Kale was summoned to testify about what he had heard. He explained every detail, the tone of the voice, the signs of human emotion, the damage patterns. When he finished, the chamber fell silent. Then one of the counselors asked, "Lieutenant Varos, do you believe they are dangerous?" Kale hesitated. "No, sir," he said softly, "I believe they're lost." After long debate, the council agreed to allow a single reconnaissance ship to approach and establish direct communication. Kale volunteered immediately. He didn't want to watch from afar anymore, he wanted to see the Resolute with his own eyes. When the shuttle departed, the vast warship grew larger and larger on the viewport until it filled the stars. Its size was breathtaking. Even in silence, it felt alive, like a giant breathing in slow motion. As they neared the hull, Kale could see the battle damage up close. Laser burns, hull fractures, melted armor, proof of ancient wars. Yet somehow, the ship had survived. He whispered to himself, "How far have you traveled to get here?" The shuttle matched orbit with the Resolute and began transmitting a standard greeting code. At first, there was no response. Then, out of nowhere, the warship's running lights flickered on, one by one, like eyes opening after a long sleep. The radio crackled again. "This is Commander Ward, requesting coordinates of Earth, please respond." Kale's throat tightened. How could he tell her that Earth was gone, destroyed centuries ago? He looked at the captain, who gave a slow nod. "Tell her the truth," Voran said. Kale pressed the calm button, his voice shaking. "Commander Ward. Earth doesn't exist anymore, you're 600 years too late." For a moment, there was only silence. Then the transmission returned, filled with static. The woman's voice came again, but softer, almost a whisper. I see, then we truly are alone. The lights on the Resolute dimmed again. Kale stared out the viewport, unable to move. He had just told the last surviving humans that their world no longer existed. The silence that followed felt heavier than space itself. Yet beneath the sadness, there was something else, a quiet determination. The human voice came one last time before fading away. If anyone still believes in Earth, know this, we never stopped searching. Kale sat there, unable to speak. In that moment, he realized the truth. The message wasn't just a cry for help, it was a reminder. Even after 600 years, even after the death of their world, humans were still reaching for the stars. The order came quietly, without any big announcement. After days of debate and fear, the Alliance Council finally approved a boarding mission. The Resolute had been silent again for almost 48 hours. Its systems flickered occasionally, as if the ship was breathing in its sleep. But there were still weak life readings deep inside. That was enough reason to act. Kale Varos was chosen as part of the task team. He didn't know if it was luck or fate, but he didn't question it. He just wanted to be there, to see the humans with his own eyes. He wanted answers, who they were, what happened to them, and how they had come so far. The boarding craft was small, sleek, and heavily shielded. It carried a team of 10 scientists, engineers, and 2 security officers. They approached the Resolute slowly, guided by drones scanning the hull for a safe entry point. As the shuttle neared the giant ship, Kale felt its presence, silent, massive, ancient. Its dark surface looked burned and broken, but it still held a strange dignity. Like a war hero that had never surrendered. They latched onto an airlock near the midsection. The metal was so old it barely responded to modern tools. After several tries, the door finally opened with a deep groan. A cloud of dust and frozen air escaped into space, glittering like tiny diamonds. The lights from their helmets pierced the darkness inside. The hallway beyond was quiet, too quiet. Kale stepped through the opening first. His boots touched the floor of the ship that had come from a world lost to time. The walls were covered in frost, wires hanging loose. Old warning signs were written in English: authorized personnel only, caution, radiation area, emergency exit. He couldn't read all of them, but he recognized enough. Every step echoed, every sound felt loud in the silence. Power is minimal, one of the engineers said, checking his scanner. Atmosphere stable but thin, another replied. Kale walked slowly, shining his light over the corridor. It looked like time had stopped here. Abandoned food trays, floating tools, a helmet resting against a wall. Everything frozen in place. They reached a large door marked CRYO deck, level 1. Kale's heart started to race. The cryo deck, where the crew might still be. The engineer tapped a few keys on his pad. The door's locked, he said, but the system still has power. Open it, Kale said quietly. With a hiss, the old door slid open halfway before jamming. They forced it open the rest of the way. Inside, rows and rows of cryochambers lined the walls like silent tombs. Each one was frosted over, faint blue light glowing from within. Kale stepped closer to the nearest pod, wiping away the ice. Behind the glass, a human face looked back at him, peaceful, sleeping. A woman, her hair floating slightly in the zero gravity. He froze, his breath catching in his throat. She's alive, he whispered, they're all alive. The scanners confirmed faint life signs in dozens of pods. Most systems were degraded, but the cryo units had somehow survived. An ancient AI interface came online suddenly, its voice weak and robotic. Designation, Athena, Ship AI, status, critical, it said. Kale turned to the control panel. Athena, this is Lieutenant Kale Varos of the Alliance, we're here to help. The AI paused, then replied. Alliance, not recognized, mission parameters incomplete. Kale took a deep breath. Your ship has been drifting for centuries, he said. Earth is gone, but you've made contact with its descendants. There was a long silence. Then Athena's voice came again, softer this time. Command authorization, required, unlocking restricted files. The main screen on the wall flickered to life, showing fragments of video logs. Kale watched in silence as the past played out before him. The images were shaky, old, humans in uniform, shouting over alarms. Explosions, lights flickering, someone yelling, "The Soul Defense Network has fallen." The next image showed Commander Elise Ward, younger and determined. "This is the UNS Resolute," she said, "we're evacuating the last survivors, initiating deep space escape protocol." Kale's throat went dry. He realized this wasn't just a warship, it was a lifeboat. The Resolute had carried the final remnants of Earth's people. They had fled their dying world, hoping to find somewhere safe. But something had gone wrong. The AI's logs showed damage to the navigation system and loss of contact with the fleet. For centuries, the ship had wandered through space. Until it found its way here. One of the scientists gasped, pointing at a chamber near the front. Inside was Commander Ward, her face calm, her hand still gripping a small metallic pendant. Kale wiped away the frost and read the tag on the glass, "Captain, Elise Ward." He remembered her voice from the transmission. "This is the UNS Resolute, we seek survivors of Earth." She had been calling out, even as her body slept. The crew worked quickly, connecting power cables from the shuttle to the ship's systems. Lights flickered to life across the cryodeck. The AI's tone grew clearer. "Power restored, cryostasis integrity holding, awaiting command input." Kale swallowed hard. "Begin revival procedure for Commander Ward," he said. The AI hesitated. "Warning, revival may cause system instability," it said. Kale nodded. "Do it." A deep hum filled the chamber as the cryo unit powered up. The frost began to melt, steam rising around the glass. Inside, the woman's fingers twitched. A monitor beeped, heartbeat detected, weak but steady. Kale's chest tightened as he watched her eyes slowly open. They were pale blue, dazed, unfocused. She coughed, taking her first breath in centuries. The medics rushed forward, wrapping her in a thermal blanket. Kale stepped closer, not sure what to say. She looked around, confused, her voice weak. "Who are you?" Kale knelt beside her. "I'm Lieutenant Kale Varos of the Alliance," he said gently. "You're safe now." She frowned slightly. "The Alliance, never heard of it," she murmured. Kale hesitated. "It's been a long time, Commander," he said softly. "How long?" she asked. Kale met her eyes. 600 years. Her lips parted in shock. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then she whispered, almost to herself. 600 years, and we're still alive. Tears welled in her eyes, but there was something else too, relief. Against all odds, the Resolute had survived. Her people were still here. And as Kale looked at her, he knew that humanity's story was far from over. The sound of beeping monitors filled the cryodeck as Commander Elise Ward slowly sat up on the edge of her cryopod. Her skin was pale, her movements weak, and her breath shaky. 600 years of frozen sleep had left her body fragile, but her mind was sharp. Her blue eyes moved from Kale to the others, studying their strange uniforms and unfamiliar faces. She could tell right away, these weren't humans, at least not fully. Their shapes were different, their eyes glowed faintly, and their voices carried a strange tone. Still, she sensed no threat, only curiosity and concern. Kale stayed close, giving her water and checking her vitals on his scanner. He didn't know what to say. How do you tell someone they've been lost for centuries? She looked at him with quiet strength. "Where is Earth?" she asked softly. Kale hesitated, then answered the only way he could. "Gone, Commander, destroyed a long time ago." The words hung in the air like a heavy shadow. Elise closed her eyes for a moment, breathing slowly. Her hands trembled, but she didn't cry. "I see," she whispered, "then it's true, we failed. Kale shook his head quickly. No, you didn't fail, he said, you survived, your ship found its way back, across galaxies, across centuries. Elise looked at him again, her expression filled with disbelief and sorrow. Our mission was to find a new home for humanity, not to drift into history, she said quietly. Kale didn't know how to answer. There was nothing he could say that could make that pain easier. The engineers continued to restore power to the Resolute. One by one, more systems flickered to life, lights, terminals, control panels. The ship's AI, Athena, became more stable, her voice smoother and clearer. Welcome back, Commander Ward, Athena said, mission status, incomplete. Systems integrity at 43%. Elise leaned against the pod, her voice tired but firm. Athena, show me the last logs. The holographic display came to life in front of them, showing grainy images from 6 centuries ago. Kale and the team stood silently, watching history unfold. The ship was under attack, bright flashes lit up the command deck as alarms screamed. Crew members shouted orders, sealing bulkheads and rerouting power. Earth's final war was raging. The Federation had fallen, and the Resolute was one of the last ships to leave orbit. We have to protect the civilians, a younger Elise shouted in the video. Her face was smeared with ash, her voice shaking with emotion. Then the footage cut to chaos, explosions, loss of navigation, and then, darkness. Athena's voice filled the silence again. Primary engines damaged. Communication array destroyed. Fleet connection lost. Estimated time in deep space drift, 597 years. Kale exhaled slowly, realizing what that meant. The Resolute hadn't been traveling, it had been drifting through the endless night for 6 centuries. No direction, no signal, no help. Just frozen souls waiting to be found. Elise stared at the hologram, her eyes glassy. So we didn't make it to the colony, she murmured. Kale looked at her, confused. Colony? She nodded slowly. Before the war ended, Earth's last leaders sent several ships to a new system, a world called Horizon, our last hope. She paused, taking a deep breath. If they survived, then humanity might have lived on. Kale hesitated before speaking. There was no record of Horizon in our archives, he said, but there is something. He opened his datapad and pulled up a file from the Alliance database. It showed a planet, green, blue, thriving. Its name, New Sol. Our records say this world was discovered 500 years ago, Kale explained. The settlers who built it called themselves Terrans, but they claimed no connection to Earth. Over time, they joined the Alliance and became one of us. Elise stared at the image of the planet. Her lips parted slightly, her voice trembling. They forgot who they were, she said quietly, they forgot us. The truth hit Kale too. He realized that the humans they knew today weren't the same ones who left Earth. They were descendants who had erased their past, the wars, the pain, the destruction. To build peace, they had buried their own history. And now, the Resolute had returned carrying the truth they tried to forget. The Alliance command received Kale's report hours later. When they learned what the Resolute carried, logs, DNA samples, ancient human artifacts, it caused chaos again. Some leaders feared the old Terran records could divide the Alliance. Others believed it was humanity's duty to remember. For Elise, none of that mattered yet. She just wanted to save her crew. She ordered Athena to begin reviving the others, but the AI warned her. Cryo units damaged. Revival may result in fatality for 72% of crew. Elise stood in silence, eyes fixed on the glowing pods. Kale stepped closer. Commander, maybe we can transfer the survivors to our med ships, he said. She looked at him, her expression soft but tired. You don't understand, Lieutenant, she said, these people left everything behind, their families, their world, to protect humanity's future. They deserve to see what they fought for. Kale nodded slowly. He admired her strength, even after learning the truth about her world's fate. She wasn't angry, only determined. He could see in her eyes that she carried centuries of sorrow and pride. That night, as the Resolute floated among the stars, Elise stood at the command bridge again for the first time in hundreds of years. The room was dim, the glass windows cracked, but the stars outside were the same. Cale joined her quietly. "Do you think they'll accept you?" he asked. Elise smiled faintly. "Maybe not," she said, "but they need to remember who they are. You can't build peace by forgetting your past." Cale looked out into the dark void where Earth once was. He thought about what she said, about memory, loss, and truth. The Resolute had not come to conquer. It had come to remind the galaxy that humanity's story wasn't over. Athena's voice interrupted their thoughts. "Commander Ward, long-range scanners detect transmission from nearby relay, message from the Alliance Council." Elise turned. "Play it," she said. The voice came through, calm but cold. "Commander Ward, this is the Alliance Council. We have reviewed your ship's data and mission logs. You carry knowledge that was deliberately erased from our records. We request you turn over all classified materials for containment." Elise exchanged a look with Cale. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to the control panel, rested her hand on the glass, and whispered, "After 600 years, you want us to stay silent again?" Then she looked up at Cale. Her eyes were calm but fierce. "The truth doesn't belong to them, Lieutenant," she said quietly. "It belongs to everyone." The tension on the Resolute grew heavier with every passing hour. The message from the Alliance Council kept repeating through the ship's speakers. They wanted the humans to surrender all their data, their history, and their ship. To them, the Resolute was a relic, a dangerous reminder of humanity's violent past. But to Elise Ward, it was more than metal and memory. It was the last proof that humanity had once dared to reach for the stars. Cale stood beside her in the command bridge, his face pale in the dim light. The stars outside glittered cold and silent. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Then Cale finally said what they were both thinking. "They're afraid." Elise turned slowly, her voice quiet. "Yes, they are, because truth is always something the powerful want to control." The ship's systems had mostly recovered now. More of the crew had been revived, though not all survived the process. Those who lived walked the halls of their ship in shock and confusion. They didn't recognize the technology around them. They didn't know the galaxy had changed. To them, the Alliance was a stranger. And Earth, their home, was gone. One of the engineers, Lieutenant Harris, approached Elise. "Commander," he said, his voice trembling, we heard the message. They want us to hand over our archives, our mission logs, everything." Elise nodded. "I know," she said calmly, "and I'm not going to do it." The room fell silent. Cale looked at her sharply. "Commander, if you refuse, they might send ships. They could see it as rebellion." Elise smiled faintly. "I'm not rebelling, Lieutenant, I'm remembering." She turned toward the viewport, watching the stars drift by. Her mind was racing, trying to balance what was right and what was safe. She had spent her life fighting for humanity's survival. Now she was being asked to erase it all again. She couldn't do that. The past had already been forgotten once, that's what led to their disappearance. She wouldn't let it happen a second time. Meanwhile, on the Alliance command ships outside, the atmosphere was tense. Fleet Admiral Soren paced across the bridge. He had seen the recordings, heard Elise's voice. He respected her bravery, but he feared what would happen if the truth spread. If the people learned that the Alliance was built on the ashes of a forgotten Earth. Old loyalties might awaken. Old divisions might rise again. He gave the order. "Prepare a boarding party." Cale received the news through his communicator. The Alliance was sending troops to secure the Resolute. He ran to the bridge, his heart pounding. "Commander, they're coming," he said, "armed boarding units, maybe within an hour." Elisa's expression didn't change. She just nodded. "Then we don't have much time." She called the crew together, the humans who had just awakened and the few remaining Alliance officers still loyal to Cale. Her voice was calm but strong. When we left Earth, our mission was simple, to save what was left of humanity, she said. We failed to save our world, but we carried its memory. Now others want to erase that memory again. But I will not let them. The crew murmured among themselves. Some were scared, others angry, but all of them understood. They had already lost everything once, they weren't about to lose their history too. Cale hesitated, torn between duty and conviction. He was part of the Alliance, he had sworn to follow orders. But looking at Elise, he saw something greater, courage, truth, and purpose. He took a deep breath and said quietly, "Tell me what you need me to do." Elise met his eyes and gave a small, grateful nod. "I need time," she said. "Athena is preparing to transmit our data to every major system in the galaxy. If they take the ship before we finish, the truth will be lost again." Cale's pulse quickened. "You're broadcasting everything?" "Yes," Elise said, "every record, every voice, every image of what humanity once was. They can't destroy all of it if everyone has it." As the Alliance ships drew closer, the Resolute's corridors buzzed with activity. Power conduits were rerouted, shields boosted, old weapon systems reactivated. The humans weren't preparing for war, they were defending their right to exist. Cale coordinated the systems from the command deck. Alarms echoed through the ship as boarding vessels approached. The pressure was building. Elise stood in the center of the bridge, calm amid the chaos. "Status of the transmission?" she asked. Athena's holographic form flickered beside her. 78% complete, Commander, 2 minutes remaining." Cale looked at the sensors. "They've breached the outer airlocks," he said, "we've got incoming." The deck shook slightly as the first boarding pods attached. Elise didn't flinch. Her eyes stayed on the countdown. 90%. 94. A loud metallic thud echoed through the ship, followed by the sound of boots on metal. Cale pulled his sidearm but didn't fire. The intruders moved cautiously, not wanting to damage the ancient ship. Over the radio, a voice called out. "This is Admiral Soren, stand down, Commander Ward. You are in violation of Alliance peace law." Elisa's voice came through the comm calmly. "Peace built on lies is only silence, Admiral." Athena's countdown reached 99%. Then the AI said, "Transmission complete, all data distributed across public networks, Commander." Elise finally exhaled, her eyes soft with relief. "It's done," she whispered. The boarding teams reached the bridge moments later. They found Elise standing tall, unarmed, with Cale beside her. The Admiral appeared on the main screen, his face hard but weary. "You've just endangered the entire galaxy, Commander," he said. Elise looked straight at him. "No," she said, "I've just reminded it who it is." The Admiral said nothing. He knew it was too late, the truth was already out. Across thousands of worlds, people were watching the newly released recordings of Earth's final days. They saw the courage, the sacrifice, the hope that had once driven humanity to the stars. And they realized that their history was far deeper than they had ever been told. The boarding officers lowered their weapons slowly, unsure what to do next. Cale stood silently beside Elise, knowing what she had risked. Maybe she had broken the law, but she had done something bigger, she had given life back to a forgotten story. Elise turned to the viewport, watching the distant glow of New Sol. Her voice was soft but steady. "Let them know," she said, "Earth may be gone, but humanity endures." The Admiral didn't respond. He simply closed the channel, his image fading from the screen. Silence returned to the bridge, broken only by the hum of the engines. Cale looked at Elise. "What happens now?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Now," she said, "we start again." And outside the cracked windows of the Resolute, the stars seemed to shine brighter. As if the universe itself was listening. Finally remembering the name of the world that started it all. The stars were quiet again, but nothing in the galaxy was the same anymore. The Resolute floated peacefully above the glowing blue planet known as New Sol. Its engines were silent, its hull scarred, but its mission, the one that began 600 years ago, was finally complete. The truth about Earth, about humanity's long and painful journey, had spread across every system in the Alliance. People were talking, remembering, arguing, learning. For the first time in centuries, the story of humanity was being told honestly. Commander Elise Ward stood on the bridge, her hands resting on the glass, staring down at the world below. It looked so familiar and yet so different. Oceans shimmered in the sunlight, mountains glowed under golden clouds. It was like seeing Earth again, reborn in another corner of the universe. Kale Varos stood beside her, quietly watching. Neither of them had spoken for several minutes. Words felt too small for the moment. Finally, Kale broke the silence. "They're calling this the Second Dawn," he said softly. Elise smiled faintly. "Second Dawn," she repeated, "that's a good name." She turned slightly toward him. "What's the reaction?" she asked. Kale hesitated. "Mixed," he said, "some worlds are celebrating, others are angry, especially the Council. They say releasing the data caused chaos, but I think it woke something up. People are questioning what they were taught, they're remembering where they came from." Elise nodded slowly, her eyes still on the planet. "That's what truth does," she said quietly, "it changes people, even when it hurts." For her, this wasn't victory, it was peace. A long, quiet peace she had been waiting for since the day she boarded the Resolute. She remembered her old crew, their faces full of hope and fear. Most of them were gone now, lost to time, but she felt them here, in every heartbeat of the ship, in every flicker of light from its engines. The ship's AI, Athena, appeared as a soft holographic glow beside them. "Commander Ward," she said gently, "Alliance representatives are requesting a meeting." Elise sighed. "Let them wait a little longer," she said, "I just want to see the sun rise on this world first." Athena nodded, fading back into the ship's systems. Kale watched the sunlight spread across New Sol's surface, bright and golden. He turned to Elise. "You know," he said, "they're already calling you the last captain of Earth." Elise gave a small laugh. "I never wanted to be anyone's legend," she said, "I just wanted to keep my people alive." "But you did," Kale said, "and you did more than that, you brought history back to life." Elise looked at him, her expression soft. "No," she said, "we did." In the weeks that followed, everything changed. Across the galaxy, people gathered to watch the ancient recordings transmitted by the Resolute. They saw Earth's blue oceans, its green forests, its people, laughing, crying, fighting, dreaming. They saw how it ended, war, fire, loss, but also how it began again. For many, it was the first time they understood what it truly meant to be human. Not by species or blood, but by courage, hope, and the desire to start again after everything falls apart. On New Sol, a great memorial was built in the heart of the capital city. It wasn't grand or golden, just a tall black stone carved with two simple words. "We remember." At its base, a small metal plate carried the names of the Resolute's crew. Every visitor who came touched the stone, leaving behind a flower, a word, or a tear. Elise refused to attend the opening ceremony. She didn't want to be seen as a hero. Instead, she stayed aboard the Resolute, helping Kale and the engineers restore its systems. When the day came, she watched the ceremony from orbit. She saw children holding up small flags, not of planets or species, but of Earth. She smiled quietly, whispering to herself. "You made it, old girl," she said to her ship, patting the console beside her. "You brought us home." The Alliance, realizing they couldn't control the story anymore, decided to rewrite it instead. They declared the Resolute and its crew as Guardians of Historical Truth. It was a fancy title, but Elise didn't care for politics. What mattered to her was that humanity's memory was safe. No one could erase it again. Kale, who once followed orders without question, now found himself part of something larger. He became the first liaison between humans and the newer races of the Alliance. Everywhere he went, people asked him about the Resolute. What the old humans were like, what Earth had looked like, what Commander Ward was really like. He always said the same thing. She's proof that even when time forgets you, the human spirit never gives up. As months passed, the Resolute was repaired enough to travel again. Not for war or rescue this time, but for exploration. Elise decided that the ship's next journey would not be about escaping the past, but embracing the future. She gathered a small crew, humans, aliens, and hybrids, all volunteers who wanted to see the stars through her eyes. When Kale asked where they were going, she simply smiled. "Wherever the stars take us," she said. On the morning of their departure, she stood at the command deck one last time, looking out at New Sol. The planet glowed beneath them, alive and full of voices. She thought of the old Earth, of the oceans she'd never see again, the people she'd lost, the promises left unfulfilled. But she also thought of everything they had achieved. Their legacy wasn't in monuments or history books. It was in the simple fact that life went on, that humanity endured. That even after 600 years of silence, they still found their way home. Kale joined her at the viewport, smiling faintly. "Ready, Commander?" he asked. Elise looked at the stars one last time and nodded. "Let's begin again," she said. The Resolute's engines flared softly, golden light spreading across its wings. As it drifted forward, leaving New Sol behind, its signal echoed one final message across the stars. "This is the UNS Resolute. To all who can hear us. Remember where you came from. And never stop searching." The message traveled far, bouncing off satellites, drifting through space, reaching worlds that had never heard of Earth. On every world, someone paused to listen. And for a moment, even the coldest stars seemed a little warmer. In the end, the Resolute became more than a ship. It became a symbol, not of war, but of endurance. A reminder that time can bury memories, but not spirit. And as it vanished into the distance, glowing like a star of its own, the galaxy whispered the name it once tried to forget. Earth. And for the first time in 600 years, that name meant hope again.